Thank you, everybody, for attending. My name is Bob Hyams. I'm on the Conservation Commission. And we are holding this event in the historic and cavernous Hinesburg Town Hall. We have little experience in holding events here. So to that end, everyone out there, make sure that you could hear what's going on, that you could see what's going on. And if not, let us know. There are restrooms, one restroom upstairs and two restrooms downstairs. If the presentation becomes too much for you, you can't stand what you're hearing, this is the only exit. Now, there's plenty of exits. You can use any door. You got to run, use any door you want. Okay. So one other thing, putting it to the citizens. Age-old question. Maybe you have an answer, Patty. Is the plural beaver or is it beavers? Okay, is it plural of beaver, or is it beavers? Okay, I don't know. I want to see a show of hands. Let's go for beaver. Like cattle, right? Like cattle. Okay. Who goes for beavers? Okay, whatever. Okay. Yeah, that's it. You guys can go. We figured it out. Thank you for being here. All right. So beavers are having themselves a day in, thank you for coming. You could find some chairs or maybe somebody, yeah, there's a couple of chairs around you could squeeze in. Beavers are having themselves a day in Hinesburg and the surrounding communities. They're reclaiming the streamscapes that they called home for thousands of years before they are extirpated in the 17th century. Okay. That said, they're returning to a very different landscape than the one where they evolved. Streams have been ditched and burned, making damming more difficult, more challenging. Floodplains are devoid of all the native woody vegetation, which they use to build and to sustain themselves. And even when wood is present, it is really often it's exotic and unpalatable. Okay, it's all of our invasive species, plant species that we're all familiar with: Champlain Valley buckthorn, honeysuckle. And of course, they're not alone. Beavers have come home to find a whole slew of foreign competitors doing all kinds of stuff in the world. Okay. The elephant in the room, of course, is humans, but let's not forget the impact that deer are having. Okay. When beavers were here, pre-17th century, there were very few deer in Vermont. And what the deer are doing effectively is they're undermining sort of the beaver plant relationship that keeps everything going. So why should we care about beavers? And in some cases, go to great lengths to help them persist on the landscape. Beavers confer a whole host of benefits that make our world more livable for everybody, everything. Beavers make Vermont more resilient to the impacts of climate change. And they can be a key contributor to cleaning up, to addressing the water quality problems in Lake Champlain that we're all aware of. And in some and what's interesting about it, so we know that, beavers do so much good work, and we can enumerate all these benefits that we're getting from beavers. And we refer to those things as ecosystem services, benefits that humans are receiving from natural systems. And now we actually have an interesting time in our history where, because we're cleaning up Lake Champlain, we can now actually put a price tag on the benefits that beavers are doing on the landscape. So that in itself opens up a whole range of policy questions and opportunities. This afternoon, we're going to learn a whole bunch about beavers and how they interact with their evolving world. And to teach us, we have two experts. I'm going to give you the low bio. Skip Lisle is a biologist and founder of Beaver Deceivers International. He is a leading expert on flow devices, which are structures that protect culverts and regulate water levels. Skip has been testing materials and designs for decades and has learned how to resolve conflicts in ways that allow beavers to do the things that they do, including the creation of valuable aquatic and wetland habitats. Patti Smith is a naturalist with Bonneville Environmental Education Center in Brattleboro, where her work has become increasingly focused on beavers and beaver ecology. Patti's book, The Beavers of Popple's Pond, is an account of years spent closely observing a colony of beavers in Marlborough, Vermont. As a wildlife rehabilitator, Patti has rescued and raised many orphan mammals, including beavers.
I've had some laryngitis this week, so I'm not as loud as usual. Can you hear me in the back? Excellent. I'm just going to start by telling you how I came to be such a big fan of beavers. Of course, we who live around here are very familiar with the amazing things they do. Beavers can build dams. If you were a kid that grew up in Vermont and tried to dam a stream with rocks, you've got a special appreciation for these rodents. They also cut down trees with their teeth, which is pretty cool. And if you spend a lot of time just walking through the woods, it can get a little monotonous. It's trees, 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 until you come to a place like this, where beavers have been active. And then suddenly you have open lands, you have ponds and marshes, and so much wildlife. And so my appreciation for beavers might have remained on this level of, yeah, beavers are great, until a friend gave me a beaver sprite. And this woman here, Dorothy Richards, lived in the Adirondacks, 40s, 50s, 60s, and had some beavers reintroduced into her backyard. And she became a crazy beaver lady. As you can see, she was so amazed by the way they transformed what was essentially a sterile field into incredible wildlife habitat. She started spending every evening there watching the beavers, and she went a little farther. She got a permit to raise some baby beavers in her basement, which she flooded. And they would come upstairs. The caption there says, Punk and I were equally pleased with our affection for one another. So from Dorothy and reading this amazing book that she wrote called Beaver Sprite, I really recommend it to everyone. Of course, you could become a crazy beaver lady too. So just that warning. I learned that beavers are so intelligent and have a sense of humor, and they're helpful. All right. This beaver is taking these sticks out, of course, not bringing them in. So after reading that book, I was inspired to go hang out with the beavers that live in the big wild beaver flowage in my backyard down in Marlborough, Vermont. And so for the past 20 years, I have been getting to know the beavers and following their colony and the rise and fall and trials and triumphs. And then this happened. Uh-oh is right. So during COVID, so you'll have to excuse my attire. Of course, I'm wearing my pajamas like everyone did during COVID. And I'm really hoping you're going to get some sound here. So I had to rescue some baby beavers whose mother was hit by a car. And they were practically newborns. This is what newborn beavers look like. Listen very carefully. we've been really struggling with sound on shoulders. There we go. Is it? Baby beavers, very noisy. So this is a 2-year project and they're aquatic, and I don't recommend anyone try this. There were 3, and only one of them survived into adulthood. Yeah, it was a real trial. Let's see here. It's a special beaver formula. As a wildlife rehabilitator, you have access to all kinds of different formulas. Beavers are built for the water, and in the water, they're really invincible. And I'm just gonna take you through some of the adaptations that make them such extraordinary aquatic creatures. They probably evolved back in the Miocene, which was a long time ago, and eventually alongside this other gigantic beaver, Castor ohioensis, that was a big swamp-dwelling beaver. Take a look at this most remarkable beaver appendage. The tail, of course. Did you know beavers could hold their tails up like that if they're really cold? Beaver tails really help them when they're swimming, more as ballast and weight and steering. They don't use them to carry things. They don't use them as trowels. They do use them for heating and cooling. And of course, these extraordinary hind feet, which are fantastic paddles. They also have split toenails on the inner 2 toes, which are very important to keep their coats waterproof. They have these long guard hairs that shed water, and underneath is this really, really dense woolly coat that keeps the water from their skin. So they can just dive into that ice cold water all year. And here's my pal Pumpkin demonstrating the use of that very nice comb. They spend a lot of time grooming. And I learned what it feels like when they're doing that grooming. This is Pumpkin when he was a single baby for a while, and I had to spend a lot of time with him, and he is grooming my finger, and what he's doing is rubbing his very, very sharp incisors back and forth. So when they're grooming themselves and each other, they're rubbing their fur through their teeth, and you can see how sharp the teeth are by the spoons on your hands. But you know, the things we do for the kids. Eventually had a lovely mate, and they spent a lot of time helping keep their coats in condition. Look at that very elegant hydrodynamic shape, all that great buoyancy and the way they can float through the water. And you can kind of see in this picture the way they have some little flaps that close behind their teeth so they can chew underwater. Yum, yum, yum. What I really want you to notice here are those paws. They're very dexterous, and those very strong nails. They're incredible digging machines. And this little baby beaver here is just showing you that they're built like tanks. They're just super powerful critters. Just a recap of those wonderful aquatic adaptations. large webbed feet, water shedding outer coat, dense soft inner coat, strong flattened tail, lips closed behind teeth, dexterous paws with strong claws, hydrodynamic form. Amazing beavers. So now we have this creature that's designed to be in the water. How do we get the water? So Pumpkin was just a natural dam builder, as you can see. In his enclosure, the only place he could figure out to build a dam was off the side of the ramp that led into his tank. And he just used whatever materials were available, nets, books, computers, whatever ended up in there, glasses. Maybe over here. But all these things he just knew how to do without any instruction. Here's a beaver in the wilderness doing much the same thing. And you'll notice that unlike the kids who try and build dams with rocks and sticks, they're pushing things in the direction that the water is flowing. It turns out that does work better. Less likely to just get washed away and deliver a load of mud after that. Just a cross section of a dam showing the downstream side with all the woody stuff going in the direction of the water flow, and the upstream side is mud that they pile on afterwards. And all that excavating of mud also makes the pond deeper. Pumpkin and Pie were released into a neighbor's pond with a fence, and Pumpkin immediately started working on a lodge, which is the next thing they need, some kind of shelter. So here's a little lodge building instruction from this little 1-year-old beaver who's never actually been in a beaver lodge. They dig a hole into the bank, you bring your stuff in and shove it into place. It's not very elegant, but I tried to do this myself and did not work at all. So yeah, you just take things and shove them until they seem to be in a secure position. And then you go outside and do this move called the egg beater jellyfish. So these beavers just submerge their heads and tails, and they dig with their front feet and they churn with their hind feet. And that's how they excavate a deeper channel outside the lodge. And just a quick series showing these beavers in their lodge construction over the period of a week. This lodge was built up against the side of the fence of their enclosure, so it had a feature that most don't, which is a window. I was able to stick my phone in there. So this is inside of this beaver lodge that was built by these kids. And there's the exit out to the pond. Bringing in some materials. I'm not sure what they were for. The cavity inside was just maybe 1.5 feet. Well, you can see there, you get a sense of it. A year later, when Pumpkin was living in the wilderness, he showed me some other things that beavers do when they're building lodges. He had a little fixer-up lodge at his new home, and he's struggling a bit with this stick. He's got a spot that he really wants it to go into. He says, forget it. And this amazes me. So he says, all right. Takes it out around the tree and back. And this time it goes right in, just where he was trying to put it before. And just in case you think that's a one-off, here's another video. He takes a really long stick. This time he bypasses the tree, goes into the pond and turns around, and then goes in on that side of the tree. And then, oh, yes, much better. Just crazy stuff. And so he's a 2-year-old beaver at this point. He should be all grown up. This just shows that he's still a silly child. Nice having beavers around. What's that? Oh, I never thought of it like that. I like that. Sort of a purr.
What'd you say?
Sort of a purr. And another beaver in the wilderness in action, showing how well they walk on their hind feet. The next phase of lodge construction was covering the top with mud. All except for the vent at the top for airflow. And that's what they do in the fall, getting ready for winter. So it all freezes up nice and solid and makes them secure from predators. And here's a beaver lodge all set for fall. This pile of sticks out in front is their winter food supply that they gather in, because the next thing that happens is this, and they can't get out of their ponds literally in a lot of cases. So they really need that supply of food to be under the ice with them. And if you get out there when you've got some black ice at the beginning of winter, you can walk around and see the beavers swimming underneath you. The poor beavers do try and keep the ice open as long as they possibly can, but eventually they lose. And it's winter time. You can tell their lodges are occupied because often that vent will be melted out. This is a scene that I saw. Come on. This is pumpkin and pie in February when they were not 2 years old yet. And we're not supposed to be getting up to this sort of thing because they're still practically babies. They did. So that's when that happens. It happens in the winter when a lot of beavers are just isolated in their ponds. But finally, there's a thaw, and you're not going to be able to hear this, but this is my friend Jen from, she's a beaver biologist out in Seattle and came to visit the day that I had kids, even though she was just 2 years old. And we could hear the little squeakers in there. But the sound system is not going to help with that, so. Baby beavers spend their first month in the lodge, and finally, a month after we heard those first squeaks, this little thing appeared. And the great trees. And it turned out that there were actually 3 of them. These are the 3 baby beavers. We called them the nutmegs. Couldn't tell them apart, so they were all the nutmegs. Another thing that happens in spring is that beavers start to disperse, the 2-year-old, sometimes older beavers, and trying to find a place to live is a big challenge. And the beavers that have a territory really want to make sure no one else is going to horn in on it. So they're busy making scent mounds. They scoop up mud from the pond, and this is Beavrix. He is also going to give his opinion of the trail camera. He has no tail. We'll back him up for a sec so you can admire what an unusual beaver he is. Come back here, Beavrix. There he is. I don't know what happened to his tail, but he manages to survive, and he's learned to adapt. Because there are so few places where beavers can be beavers, they have to be very territorial. And I went out one night and in the fall of all times and smelled this remarkable smell, which you can all now smell because I'm going to pass it around. The scent that they use to mark those mounds is castoreum, and it's extremely pungent but not unpleasant if you get just a small sniff of it. Right?
It smells like the bug over.
Oh, kind of pine tar. Yeah, okay, now, yeah, pine tar. Anyway, so it turns out some other beavers had come up and over the mountain and into their watershed, and there was a big beaver battle that just happened. And they will fight and to the death sometimes. The residents prevailed, and I don't know whatever became of the others. But as Bob was saying, the beavers have returned to this area and have found that along all of the places where they used to live, there are now roads. So that's no longer good habitat for beavers. They also can't live along rivers like this that get these big flashy flows that would just wash their dam away. Skip will talk more about the kinds of places where beavers can do well. Just a few quick slides talking about some of the benefits beavers bring to streamscapes. When they build a pond, the water spreads out, sunlight penetrates and feeds this phytoplankton that feeds zooplankton that feeds these multicellular creatures, the macroinvertebrates that feed the fish. And they also create all of these little microhabitats, because not only do beavers make ponds, they leave ponds. In my backyard, the beavers move every single year from one place to another. And once they leave, they've left this rich silt behind, and you will find these great beaver meadows. And after beavers have been in a place for several generations, peat starts to build up from all the sphagnum moss, and you get these organic soils that support semi-permanent wetlands. So even when the beavers are gone for a while, you're going to have an open wetland there. And this is what happened in my backyard. There was just a little single thread stream going through there back in the 1960s before the beavers came back. And now you've got all these different islands and stream channels and ponds and meadows. And just a couple pictures of some of the critters caught on my trail camera next to beaver ponds. This is yeah, I've been looking my whole life for a bittern, and finally shows up on this trail camera. I'm just a blade of grass. You can't see me. You can't see me. They love beaver wetlands. And this guy, of course, always showing up on the trail cameras. I like to think that's my friend Max, who I raised, but probably not. And this one is much better when you can hear it, but there's a little winter wren. They love exploring beaver dams, and this one's doing all kinds of crazy displays. And here we are going to transition, and Skip is going to talk about, so I'll just say that, well, beavers can be charming and have a lot of wonderful attributes. They can also be a total pain in the neck. And I would have no idea what to do about that if I didn't know this person over here who is going his full life figuring out how to make the world safe for beavers and vice versa. Skip Lisle, come on up. I would answer a few questions before we transition, so yes.
Patty, my name is Melissa. We corresponded by email, and we have 3 ponds on our farm in Huntington. Now all are occupied by beavers. One has been eroded, has drained down quite a bit because of their damming. But I wanted to ask you this question. When your winter catch is placed in front of their lodge, we had several times their dams and the road to flooding.
Yeah.
And it's rained down to go up to the pond by about 5 feet. How do they fare when their winter catch is exposed in the pond, and then how do they deal with these deep freezes in the winter in such conditions?
Winter is a real challenge for all these wild creatures. I used to think really had it figured out, but I've spent enough time with them now to know that they can run into real trouble too. You get these high water events in the early or middle or late winter that washes out a dam, and the beavers sometimes can't get to their food cache at all if the ice collapses onto it. I've seen beavers survive in really marginal conditions where they're forced to dig out or chew their way out and hike out to log in the middle of the winter. They're incredible survivors, and most of the time they live through those situations, but not always.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yes. Thank
you.
What do beavers eat?
Oh, yes. Well, I'm going to tell you that they're strict herbivores. If Walter was here today, he would say, no, they're not, because he's eating salamander eggs, and I've seen Pumpkin eat a slug. But in the summer, they eat lots of different herbaceous vegetation. In the winter, they really are pretty limited to the inner bark of young trees. Their favorite trees are aspen. They also like apples. They tend to be very fussy about what sort of trees they'll eat because it's tough to get nutrition out of bark, so they go for the ones that have the most available nutrients.
Do they have like a double stomach that can?
They're what you call hindgut fermenters. So they've got a whole farm in their hindgut that does the digesting for them. Yeah. Yes.
Last week, the second time, he was in here, we were on bottom of the
Oh,
young people thought, better than one, it was actually right next to the building, it was
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that heavy.
Yeah.
And she did manage to get it out, she did,
Oh,
cutting apart the land. Consistent. But what would have attracted a young beaver who I would have been and very over the masses. Without it,
that's a really interesting observation, and they get desperate enough to find a place, and they do just end up going cross country. I don't know how they choose how to navigate, but they get hit by cars way out where there aren't any streams, and the beavers that came over into my watershed also came up and over a mountain. It's just tough to find a place where you can be a beaver, so I'm glad that that one had a happy ending, at least from that particular episode. And Skip's going to talk a little bit more about how that beavers get caught, and you don't have to mention it. Yeah. We'll save the rest of the questions till the end so Skip can get through his, and get through yours. Oh, the clicker, I did put it in my pocket. I didn't. Oh, must be another pocket. Oh, it's here, Skip. And here's your pointer.
Thank you very much, Patty. Such a sea of people. Patty's devoted her life to learning about beavers and decades, which represents many PhD studies. So I really appreciate all her efforts. And I also want to thank Bob Himes, who did a lot of work putting this thing together, and Kate and the town. And most importantly, all of you for coming. This is a tremendous turnout. And it's really a hopeful sign. So thank you very much. So, oops, did I advance that? And I didn't even mean to. But there's really two tremendous opportunities with beavers. You know, as Patty suggested, their habitats and the wetlands they create have enormous value. So we want to, my agenda is to try to fully exploit the values of beavers, for the benefit of society and the natural world. But it's the only way we can do that is if we protect the infrastructure, because we can't have clogged road culverts. And so that's why I've devoted decades of my life to trying to solve that problem, which it turns out is a very big challenge. But tremendous payoffs. And the trouble with, with our management of beavers, I'm going to hit you with a lot of policy and some landscape ecology and a lot of slides. So I'm going to try to move through them rather rapidly once I get going. But I just want to frame the issue because we're really kind of at war with beavers. It's hard to imagine because they're an incredibly valuable animal for us. And yet our inability or unwillingness to protect the infrastructure non-lethally means that we have to treat them as a pest. And, so for example, the trapping season is 5 months long in Vermont, unlimited harvest. So you can kill maybe one turkey, but you can kill hundreds and hundreds of beavers if you want to. So I'm hoping that we can change that. And I guess a really important thing that needs to be done. We have a real advantage of having this small town government. So individuals can really make a big difference. And I often tell people that it's really important to do two things. To write a policy, a beaver policy, because select boards and road crews are constantly changing. So you just want to have that on the books. And then a little line item. Towns raise a lot of money. But every time there's a beaver conflict, they say, we have no money for what I generically call a flow device. My products are called Beaver Deceivers, but flow device covers everything. There's no money, because only because it hasn't been assigned. So that's really important to try to get those two things done in your communities. Okay. Here comes a barrage of slides. Those two beavers kind of represent those two potential areas of wealth creation. And there's also two species of beavers in the world. We have Castor canadensis here in our continent. It's a little bit of a misleading name because it kind of suggests they're a northern species, but they occupy all of the 48 states and right down to Florida and a little bit of northern Mexico as well. And then there's the Eurasian beaver, Castor fibber. And I was always wondering what fibber means, and I think, according to the internet last night, it means beaver. So their beaver's called beaver. That's even crazier than our name, I guess.
And, yeah, they eat all kinds of vegetation, including birds. So that's important to know. Patty hit on a lot of important points. Basically that, they can eke out a living in very poor habitats. They're not, there's a lot of people think that the beavers depend just on trees, and consequently, everything's always in a cycle. And, I think that sometimes that's used to justify the killing of beavers, to essentially kill them before they ever get hungry. So they eat hundreds of different species of vegetation, and occasionally some salamanders and frogs' eggs and the like. Yeah, I just want to make a couple of points. And Kate, I'm sorry, I'm going to be waiting for this. I don't need to stand. No, I don't need to stand over there. It's going to be my water over here. I'll take it over and take a wetland probably, but.
Which one?
Oh, yeah. We get through this, yeah. So, yeah, this is just one study. This is what happens everywhere. You create a wetland, beavers, as you know, they build them for free. And they're farm, really natural. They've been building wetlands on the landscape for about 8 million years. So there's another study that I was involved in Virginia, which is, similar sort of thing, just huge figures. And this is a man-made wetland. Now, at the same time, we're essentially at war with beavers. And by the way, it's basically in every state and every province, same sort of regulations and attitude, generally speaking. This is a man-made wetland in Keene, New Hampshire. They're often put in very poor areas. So much less productive than a beaver flowage, but the federal government will pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars per acre to make these. And they often make them in ancient beaver dam habitat. If we just let the beavers live, they could do it for free. And they're often also in urban areas where there's just a lot of wildlife just doesn't have access to those habitats. And so, yeah, these flowages have tremendous ecological value, tremendous, okay, I didn't say that yet, did I? A beaver created wetland I call a flowage. These wetlands are so unique, they really deserve their own name. I picked it up when I was in Maine, so I think I didn't coin the term. But they're gorgeous places, and they have tremendous ecological value and great, because beavers have such great ecological value, they're called the keystone species. However, they also have enormous hydrological value. The wetlands purify water, they help abate, they hold water during floods and then release it slowly, helping abate peak flows. The fire breaks, they can be fire ponds if they're beside the road. So that's, keystone species is purely an ecological term. So it's not nearly grandiose enough. So I call beavers a super species. Only wandered too far over there. And so flowages are just great places for education, another value, and great spiritual and aesthetic value on top of the hydrological and ecological and educational value again. This is just a town I've worked in, and they calculated that this is the kind of money they'll save by transitioning from a kill based defense to the culverts to using beaver deceivers. And so, I've seen this pattern over and over and over again. It's a great way to save a few bucks for a town or a state. And this is
Beaver deceiver, Skip?
what?
Is that a beaver deceiver?
That's a beaver dam. The big beavers pattern show. This is Ball Mountain Dam in Jamaica, Vermont. And, so you ask, well, why to the federal government to build this? Well, to abate those steep flows during floods and protect people downstream. Same thing that beaver ponds accomplish, but add a little bit more money. In addition, this is a horrendous ecological barrier. It would be a really ambitious honor if it could get over that dam and, use the West River. Be turned back. So this is basically what the beaver's relationship with other wildlife boils down to. They do all the work, everybody else is just along for the ride. I mean, it's thousands of species that have great for beavers. And here as well as in the great state of Maine. That's called the commensal relationship. I hope none of you are in such a thing. It doesn't sound that balanced. And then, you know, a lot of the occupants of these wetlands are just ingracious, right? And so this is a goose attacking a beaver. This is the same goose that its mate is nesting in an old beaver lodge. So, yeah, they just get. Anyways, oh yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. Throw in a few questions. Why do you think geese have the coloration they do? Billions of years of nesting in beaver lodges. There's a goose there. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So they nest on beaver lodges all the time. And it's particularly maybe almost exclusively the island type beaver lodges. So in addition, you know, to creating the wetlands and those magnificent habitats, beavers are constantly making them richer, even if they occupy a man-made pond, you know, that they're not responsible for the dam. They'll make lodges, they'll make canals, they'll make burrows into the bank, all kinds of little habitat features that all kinds of animals use. And these are just, I just love lodges, they're so fascinating. As long as we're on the subject. Patti said beavers are territorial, so you never get a lot of beavers in any one place. That's silver. You know, that's important to know, because a lot of the reasons they're killed is people think, oh, if they don't kill them now, this could be everywhere. I'll get into this, but they can't only occupy a tiny percentage of the landscape. They're territorial, but they make a lot of lodges. So you might see 8 lodges in a 5-acre wetland. You'll never have more than one family of beavers. They just like the lodges. There's another camouflage goose. And they're really hot, you know, they're open to the sun, they're angled towards the sun. So snapping turtles, for example, love to bask in lodges. And then on an infrared photograph, they're so hot that they occur as a white dot. I want to try out that. I got a pointer I brought, but I want to try it out. Oh, it's something I'm tall. There's a beaver dam. This is a Penobscot Indian Nation in Maine wetlands. That's where I work, and I'm going to talk a bit about them in a second. And then predators are frequently attracted to lodges because lodges support all kinds of little mice and other animals. Those little white dots. This is a beaver canal. And these little white dots all through there. Those are spermatophores for spotted salamanders. So I've been observing this phenomenon, and it seems like the spotted salamanders really like the beaver canals. You might call these circles of life. They also, everyone represents the movement of the jaws, the beavers chewing. But really, there's so much beauty in the water in these wetlands when there's beavers present and lots of other animals interacting and making waves. Okay, well, we had this little event called the fur trade that really changed the nature of the continent. And continues to, you know, so it began roughly when Europeans arrived, and the beavers were extirpated in short order, you know, from the eastern seaboard and Vermont. They were gone for hundreds of years. So beaver dams do not persist in the absence of beavers for very long. So even like if you have a kill policy now, and you have a beautiful beaver pond nearby that's not threatening anything, a kill policy is going to relatively quickly result in the draining of that wetland. And it did this during the fur trade, you know, perhaps 1 million beaver flowages drained across the continent. So it was an epic ecological disaster in that sense. So see the beaver dam in the background has been recently maintained. And beavers work at the water level, or the water line of a pond, which is level. Responding to what I call spillover stimuli. You might also call them damming stimuli. The sound, feel, and look of leaks. So they're not like us. Like we humans, we step back and we look at the big picture and we build something. We build like the Ball Mountain Dam. We weren't working at the water line. We built it and then wait for it to fill up with water. And so as a result, beaver dams, recently maintained beaver dams are perfectly level, which actually helps them survive during big flood events because the water will spill over the whole length of the dam evenly. But in the dams, as lodges are, they're in a rapid state of decay, and it sticks and mud and vegetation. So unmaintained by beavers, they quickly senesce, and dams quickly get uneven, and then usually a large flow event would cut through a low spot, and the whole wetland would drain. So you can see that line there, that long, flat beaver dam, long, flat, and level beaver dam line in the background. This is actually on my property. My parents bought, where am I going? Over here. Yeah. That's how easy it is to pull, to deceive me. Yeah, I've been so lucky to live this whole process because my parents unwittingly bought this property that had ancient beaver habitat on it. More specifically, beaver damming habitat, because beavers also live in big lakes and big rivers where they don't dam. But we didn't know it because the beavers had not returned. They had not recovered from the fur trade yet. So there's zero, not a quarter acre of wetlands on that property. And this is what just a part of it looks like that. So I've been for 50 years. I've been able to watch it evolve and get restored to its ancient form by the beavers. That's another section of the property. Oh, yeah, I know what I was going to say. There's such a thing as a catastrophic beaver dam failure that can cause a lot of damage. They're relatively rare, and they're mostly an issue on when it's a very big wetland. So there's a huge amount of water that can be released. But on my property, I have 10 beaver dams, and I've watched them go through, repeated massive storms like Katrina, and I've never had a failure. In fact, there was one year, often we'll have a drought, say in August, and then a hurricane rain in September or late August. And so if a big storm event like that follows a drought, then all the water will be low in the beaver ponds. And so at the end of that big rain event, all my beaver ponds were absolutely full of water. And I went down to the lowest dam, and there wasn't any water flowing out, so they had stored an enormous amount of water. And this is kind of a hard picture to figure out what it is, but I'm trying to show what happens behind beaver dams. And that you just have meters or yards of fine sediment. So they're incredibly rich places, but it also shows that the dam, any erosion that's occurring upstream, fine sediments or pollutants are in the system. They settle out into the still water of the pond. So that's how beavers, as long as the dam is intact, that's how they take pollutants and fine sediments out of the system and store it. That's what happens when beavers aren't around rather quickly. Here's another breach dam. And so that's when I did a study and I looked at the first aerial photographs of a watershed in Maine, to track the return of beavers. There were no flowages. So everything had become forested. Well, in the absence of beavers and water, the forest would just erase these flowages. A flowage should be and is generally a rich open wetland. You might call it a marsh. But it's not meant to be forested. That's all the work of the fur trade in the absence of beavers for hundreds of years. So then the next set of photographs I looked like the beavers had started coming back. So that's the same place in 1939, and then after the Beavers had arrived sometime prior to 1957. And so it's a pretty cool story. I mean, we're really lucky that Beavers survived going extinct. And we're seeing miracles everywhere as a result of it. We need to take advantage of it far greater than we are, far more than we are. So this is what a flowage, a recently restored, reoccupied beaver flowage will look like. I call them gray spots. When you look at them from Google Earth, they're just gray spots. All you see is dead trees. And so they're kind of interesting. They're beautiful. They represent the arrival of Europeans 400 years ago. They're really great wildlife habitat, wonderful nesting sites and perch trees, and foraging sites for birds. And just interesting. They kind of tell a story too as to what the rough time period beavers returned to the site. And if they returned a long time ago, then all those dead trees will have fallen over. And if they just returned, you'll have a lot of standing timber, dead timber. And so as I said, flowages, beaver damming habitat, beaver flowages can be defined as low gradient areas in small streams. It may only be a couple percent of the landscape. And so this is a big flowage that's unoccupied. That's why it's yellow, because it's not holding any water. And but this is in the Green Mountain National Forest in southern Vermont, looking towards equinox. So my point here is that you'll never see, this is the only flowage you ever see. I'm standing on Mount Snow, the ski area. But beavers can't make flowages on the slopes. They're very limited. Now, this area is really unique. This is in Woodford State Park, just a little east of Bennington. And this is some of the best beaver habitat or beaver topography I've ever seen. There was a much higher density of beaver flowages than the average site. But almost all of them are unoccupied, and I suspect it sort of reflects that long and generous trapping season. But all the yellow ones are unoccupied. And that, this little one here has beavers in it because it's black, holding water. And just kind of interesting. But the culverts on Woodford State Park and on Route 9 are not protected. So we kind of have to kill the beavers, unfortunately. But this could be just a tremendous beaver research area if we had more beavers in it. And this is kind of fun here. This is a hurricane struck, that white line across there. That's one of the flowages up close. It's about 15 acres. Beavers are territorial, so that's it should be almost a permanent beaver habitat, but they haven't been there in a long time. Yeah, this is a culvert on Route 9, so that's what I call a beaver magnet. This is the best damming site that's ever existed on the landscape. And beavers are economists. They don't want to have to build a giant dam if they don't have to. So I call roads just giant man-made dams. So the first beaver that comes along is always going to rethought this, which hints at the inefficiency of a killing strategy. You might call these the circles of death, because when you kill the beavers as a form of defense of the culvert, this is what happens. This is what the culverts often look like. And galvanized steel, whatever that process is, it does nothing to protect the steel from acidic water. So that's why you can see at one point the water was much higher on the sides of the culvert starting to rise. And so you just see scenes like this all the time. This is actually in Mississippi on the Natchez Trace Parkway. And that's in Massachusetts. I don't need to tell you ladies this, that you already know, but when you give a bunch of men a job, it can get real inefficient in a hurry. And then, the most basic form of defense is a grate, and that does nothing. That has to be paired with a kill policy, because it's just not sustainable for a road guy to go there and clean the grate every day in perpetuity, right? And then if you had that big thunderstorm, if that hit, you know, you're, even with no beaver dam in the grate, you're still reduced the capacity of the culvert a great deal. So that may lead, just the grate alone may lead to a road washout. And anybody have any idea what state this would be? Yeah, of course it's Maine. They do everything in Africa. That's all they think about. Yeah. Well, how about this? What state of this be? This is Vermont, of course, because, you know, we want to recycle everything. Okay, I'm gonna go into a period where I talk about low quality flow devices. I mean, my first, I get a little ahead of myself. I invented a couple of flow devices I'm very proud of. I'm mostly proud for the Penobscot Indian Nation, because I never would have had the opportunity to do that if they hadn't hired me. Call that foolish, but they did. Back in 1995, and they have a lot of land in Maine, and they had clogged culverts and washed out roads everywhere. So one of the first things I invented was a thing called a round fence filter. It's a big filter. This is not one of them. I also invented the trapezoidal fence. Big rugged trapezoidal fence. I consider them Penobscot inventions because I was just an employee, but they were my brainchild, my brain children. And so then I go around the landscape, you know, years later, decades later, and I see these really crude examples of both types of flow device, and I'm always rather disappointed because they have no chance of working. I mean, I've done this long enough that I have a real good sense of the qualitative threshold, the size threshold you have to build in order to essentially sneak water away from beavers. That's the key to protecting these conflict points and solving the problem. So this is somebody else's trapezoidal fence, very flimsy, and the beavers would just stand around it. So this is what, I mean, basically the whole flow device industry now is using these two concepts from the Penobscots that we developed in the 1990s, that I've moved away from probably 20 years ago. And then stuff like this, just really, this doesn't have a chance, but it's very, very common. People just don't understand how difficult it is to both build something in this harsh environment that's going to last. It's going to survive acidic water and floods and ice. And full beavers. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge challenge. I'm still seriously challenged today. And but this is on that national forest land down in southern Vermont. So I mean, I would like to think that the U.S. should do something better. God knows they take enough of your tax money, right? That's what sort of the average flow device out here looks like. And I consider them the greatest threat to this restoration, this two-part restoration we're trying to achieve. Because when they fail, people think that, wow, beavers are really smart. We can never outsmart them, and then they abandon the whole concept and bubble down and kill. So it's a very big problem. Some of you guys must recognize this structure.
We got married.
Over in Richmond. What?
I got married.
Oh, God bless you. I mean, if we can build something like that, we can build a decent looking flow device, right? I mean, every rural Vermont town has magnificent architecture. It's just a matter of giving it a little bit higher priority. So the combination of our giant brains and building skills as humans, and the fact that beavers are restricted to a tiny percentage of the landscape. I mean, the average town might have no more than 6 conflict points, which I could eliminate in a week or two for 50 years. That combination means we could easily beaver-proof any of your towns, easily beaver-proof the state, and just be done with it and start saving millions of dollars and start creating magnificent wildlife habitats. You just have to start the process. And for some reason, we're reluctant to start it, right? You know, and that's why I'm so encouraged by the presence of all you guys. Okay, back to the Beaver Deceiver. There's the Penobscot sign. Beaver in the upper left. This is my friend Nick Chapiel building this is an incredibly crude floor device. We thought this was a catch me out back in 1995. And then this, I mean, look at that. That's horrible. Okay. but this little wing off to the side is the beginning of the Travis. I mean, it's an original concept, pretty good, not bad for the time. I mean, real good for the time. As I said, I consider it long since antiquated. But we spent years just building something, ripping it out, rebuilding it, and the stakes were too high to ever give up. You know, because you have to extirpate the beaver. You can't just kill some of the beavers to protect the road culvert. You have to kill them all in perpetuity. And then it's just not worth it. So we would not give up. And we eventually came up with things like this. That's the Beaver Deceiver 1.0. And the basic concept was that those sides of the trapezoid is the most unnatural angle for a beaver dam. However, even though it's very big, it's 20 or 30 feet on the side, it's still attached. There's no separation. It's attached to the dam. So the beavers will start damming the culvert. And eventually they'll dam around the fin. So, you know, then we came up with a pipe system. We call this the Caster Master 1.0. So the pipe is really powerful because the beavers don't know it's hollow. They don't, and if you can eliminate the stimuli, then you can sneak water away from them. And that creates a solid pipe, creates separation, dam leak separation. Very powerful concept. So once I had a pipe system, a good pipe system, then I didn't need to use trapezoidal fences. At culverts, I could just use a simple, easy to make a square fence and put a pipe system on it. But it took me years to figure that out. So yeah, when we designed, the filter on the end we call the round fence. So we designed the round fence. We were looking for something that was large because the bigger the filter is, the slower the water molecules are as they enter it. I mean, they're picking up speed as they go into the pipe, right? You want to keep beavers away from those fast movers. You want forced nets because you don't want to get clogged by leaves and stuff. You want it to be durable in the environment, so thick wire, and ideally it's easy to make. So there it is. Doesn't look like much, but it's supporting the whole industry now, and it took us a long time just to get to this point. And this is what is now called a pond leveler. Does it look familiar at all? I mean, it's the exact same thing. Somebody else just changed the name. And they never credit the Penobscots. That's been an ongoing pet peeve of mine for decades. Yeah. Anyway. And so, and the thing is, they call it a pond leveler, and that's just a name borrowed from the Clemson leveler. So in addition to changing the name, they've given credit to Clemson for our work, for the Penobscot work. And so that's their filter has nothing in common with ours. And it's a very, very poor flow device. Very fine wire, 2 by 4 inch mesh, it'll catch every leaf. Very complicated. Just I knew about it back in the 1990s. I wanted nothing to do with it, ironically. Now it gets credit for our work. Now this is an 8-foot diameter round fence. Those are as big as you can make one. It's, so even that, I came even that's too small of a filter. And these are 6-foot diameter round fences. You can see it's in Virginia. This is an intermediate design because I'm still using that trapezoidal fence for no good reason at all. Now, this is a whirlpool. It often develops at the upstream end of pipes. And if that happens, that just screams leak. It's noisy. The beavers can see it. And they will just carry any filter with a whirlpool developed. So this is my son Forrest, and this is a first crude attempt to build a whirlpool break over the top of the end of the pipe. But it's very difficult to do that when you need a round fence. And then another issue is that beavers come in all sizes. And the mesh is not that it would matter, but this is 6-inch mesh. The only other option in epoxy coated, it's epoxy coated to protect the steel from the acidic water. The only other option is 4-inch mesh. I like the coarse mesh because it doesn't get clogged up as easily, but small beavers can come inside. And so this is what I call a misery multiplier. This is an additional wall of fencing inside the filter. But again, difficult to make in the round fence. So this is a uncoated round fence, so it's in the water. And the acidic water just ate up the whole in the bottom 2.5 feet of it. And then they just started getting buried a lot. You know, the filter was not as sophisticated as I needed. And I was having a lot of problems. So that's when I started working on what I call square fences. And this is how, I mean, it's horrible, right? It's horrible that when you're trying to invent something for the first time, that's the way it goes. And it took me years to refine it. And this is two different models. I'm just trying to figure out how best to build these kind of things. And you see, they have a lot of misery multipliers inside that destroy that internal damping environment. And this is a modern one with a great big whirlpool break and misery multipliers. And this is what the downstream might look like in a beaver dam with an 8-inch PVC pipe. And this is upside down. I actually, when they're in deep water, I build them out of spruce and then I float them out and then roll them over in place. And another nice thing about square fence filters is you can make them really narrow where you can never fit a round fence in that site, which is in Lisle. Yeah, and this is an incredibly valuable piece of real estate called the railroad. And you can imagine what would happen if beavers clogged that culvert with the railroad that high. You could just have just an enormous disaster. And many of those have occurred, to the tune of millions of dollars and a lot of liability issues. So really, really important to protect railroads. And then another thing you can do, you can add, it's easy to add these square fence filters to each other. A single simple square fence is 5 feet by 9.5 feet. And that's twice the size of the average round fence. So, and I consider that marginal. So, but it's really easy to add a second filter to get more area. Okay, this is that picture, Patty, I was looking for. This is in Essex Junction. And so you see the black section of this filter, that is 4-inch mesh. And the section to the right is 6-inch. So this is what the 4-inch look like. It's totally clogged after a high flow event, totally clogged with leaves. So that's, it's very important to protect the functional value of your filter to the greatest extent possible. And then I still like the deck on occasion. We have a nice frame to work with. Now here's another quiz for you. This is the name of that mountain is not A. This is an easy one. It's state, New York. That's in Lincoln. Lincoln, of course. Yes. And it's a very big watershed, so that's an 18-inch diameter pipe. And I'm constantly scaling the devices to the watershed. And this is an interesting feature also in Lincoln because that's a door. This thing is a beaver and large turtle door. On busy highways, I don't want to force these animals into the traffic. And they can come out here, narrow openings, it's hard to pull debris through. And then I force them into the upland. Beavers don't, they like to, when they're making a dam, they like to work in the water. So that's what that's all about. Only, I don't do it on quiet country roads. This is a forest again, and And the thing behind him is what I call a starter game. This is just whenever I have a good opportunity to create a wetland, to encourage beavers to build a dam and create a wetland, I try to do this. And, you know, the road has to be kind of high. You can't have any properties that are going to be threatened by it. And this is in Starksboro. And a man-made dam. There's a bit of a debate in Vermont right now. The state's telling us that flow devices cannot work at any man-made dams. You have to kill all the beavers at all man-made dams. And we got thousands of man-made dams. And the only way to protect them, reliably is with flow devices. It's no different. They're no different than road culverts. Okay, this is gonna be a tough one. Which state? Yeah, it's almost impossible. Yeah, I don't blame you for being stuck. Okay, I'll give you a clue, okay? Ready?
Oh, wow.
The beavers are really weird, but yeah, so this is up in northern Alaska. I was working for an Eskimo corporation. These are fascinating animals. They don't like wolves apparently. So they can come right into Nome. They get as close to Nome as they can get. And they like the excavators because they can rub their itchy hot fur on them. And this is what a beaver flowage looks like on the tundra. So yeah, not a tree within miles. Well, beavers can get by in very little, particularly if there's willow involved, because you know, I was talking about the commensal relationship, but I was mostly talking about animals. Willow and beavers have a different situation.
What do they build with if there's no trees?
What?
What do they build with if there's no trees?
Willow, I guess, willow and soil. Yeah.
Are they rain gods?
Yeah, I think it's probably the dogs. But it's a really interesting thing to see. And the lodges are huge, and I assume that's for insulation, much bigger than the average Vermont lodge. This is in Pattystown, Marlboro. I just pointed out because the little deck is designed to allow firefighters to go down there with a hose. Because these roadside ponds, not only are they the best place, I shouldn't say pond. Pond kind of connotes a man-made pond that's sterile. I should say float, wet. Anyway, yeah, I mean, they're tremendous wildlife viewing places when they're beside a quiet country road. And oftentimes there's not a fire pond around in an area like that. So it's good to have a body of water in the road. Yeah, it's the weather's field. Recent one. I mean, so, you know, this is so common, but there's a beautiful, huge wetland back there. And if we had to rely on a lethal defense of this culvert, you know, we'd lose that wetland. This is a wetland in Maine. So another thing about low quality flow devices, then people begin to say, well, they don't work here, they don't work there, they don't work in less than 3 feet of water. That's a common one. And so the only option is to kill beavers at all those sites. I don't think any of that is true. In fact, if there's no pool of water there, it's easier to succeed. Because beavers, a pool of water is escape habitat from predators. And if beavers don't have a pool of water, they feel super vulnerable and they just don't hang around it. You know, we're getting close to the end, I think, folks. I just want to end, well, I'm going to end on another thing, but this is the Penobscot land that I started working on north of Bangor, Maine, was very flat. So the wetlands were enormous. I mean, 100, 200 acres, just amazing, most amazing thing. You know, one dam was about 1/3 of a mile long, but it's still only one family of beavers, and they were clogging the road culvert. So if we hadn't been able to protect the road culvert, we'd be draining all that well. Another one, you see the lodges. And this is my property that didn't have any wetlands in 1965. And that's what it looks like now. And the reason it looks like that is because that's the site of the original Beavers right here. This is town road. And so, yeah, none of these wetlands would be there if not for that one structure. And it's as a result, the town has not had to put one penny into that, cleaning that culvert in 50 years. It's probably a world record. But so let's think of the money that represents, and then the value of these wells. It's hard, their intrinsic values are hard to quantify. How do you quantify spiritual aesthetic value? But it's the best wildlife viewing place in town, and people are stopping there all the time. Oh, there's Bob. I want to honor Bob again for all his great work here and for the environment. And this was in Charlotte. What town was it in? It wasn't Charlotte. It was, yeah, Cheese Factory Road. Yeah, it's a good place. Well, it's not a good place actually, because I know it's so dangerous. There's so much traffic there, but it's an interesting site just doing the roadside wetland we've created. And this is Melanie, John Greco, and Sarah. Let's see if I can. Yeah. Yeah, and we're hunting there. Well, Melanie helped me. Yeah. We got. I mean, these guys are, symbolic of a growing cast of wonderful Vermont characters. I'm trying to, and maybe it's my competitive nature, but it's also practical. We need political entities to set an example and lead the way. And so I'm waiting for towns to. I'm waiting for every town, any town can do it. You all can be competitive in this. Just lead the way. Beaver-proof your town. Show them how to do it. Show how to do it. But we can also do that as a state. We can also do that in the state with the people we have and the skills we have. This is Patti Smith has come up with this thing called Beaver Camp. It's just an amazing learning experience over 2 days. And part of that includes coming to my property like that. I built a bench on the beaver dam to watch beavers. I should mention, I mentioned earlier, but Patti has got funding for this and that and a lot of these other events. But it's also this organization called the Broadreach Foundation. They're fun. I always forget which one it is. It's supported a lot of this wonderful beaver work in our state. And here's Lauren Paznuski. It's one of Patti's graduates. She was helping me in Orange, Vermont, and this is the sheet of broad flowing out of. What? Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah, I mean, my business has been located in Vermont for 30 years. I haven't done a job for beach transshepherds. It's probably my fault for not being aggressive enough marketing, but I hope that will change. And this is the first one. I mean, the funding came from elsewhere. They didn't pay for it, but it's a start. It's a start. So hopefully we can do a lot more with those guys. And there's Lee. What's Lee's last name? Lee here? Lee Moncton. This is Cedar Pond. That's the outlet of Cedar Pond, right?
That's you, John. That's John, isn't it?
What?
That's John. John, that's you too.
No, I thought it was Lee. I know.
It's Lee, but I think the other guy is John.
Yeah. I think the other guy is John. Yeah. I wasn't sure. I said, I was listening to that. I said, did I wear that kind of hat that day? But yeah, it's John who's here. It's fantastic. And Lee, he lives on the lake.
Just a quick note, because we actually lived down there. That pond 5 to 6 years ago was literally flooding and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage to camps. And a lot of those camps were seasonal and boring around. So my sister, who's the head of the Naturalist Association, got on it, and this is how we met Skip. And we have right now 2 devices and an extra plate in there. And we have not had any flooding on that pond in 5 years. None. Even during heavy rains. So Cedar Lake is a really good example of for other people to look at. And if you go on the Cedar Lake Association website, you can actually see pictures of the flooding and compare it to the after. So they really do work, and they really can save hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage to people's property and certainty what the actual devices costs. And just clearly when it comes to the towns, this is skip over this part, the investment in a beaver flow device is not additional money to the budget. It's moving money from your road to budgets, from cleaning out dams and killing beavers and doing all that to just basically a maintenance. It's the same amount of money. Not asking taxpayers for more money, it's absolutely moving from one part of the budget to another. You actually end up saving a lot of money doing that. So we have a website at the Vermont Beaver Association, there are cards out there. You can grab and we connect you with all these people that are here today. So if you have information or anything like that, grab them with cards and send us an email, we will get in touch with the areas if we any of these things. And we will come to your town. I will come to your town with the president of your select department. So we got it. Pretty much covered.
I forgot Michael's status. You can find me.
Michael's still out there.
Okay, you can also find me at beaverdeceivers.com on the World Wide Web. But I saved this, the anchor, I wanted to recognize you.
No,
Yeah, it's too late.
I'm nobody, I'm just a person that lived in Moncton who didn't even know what a beaver was 6 years ago, okay? I'm like the perfect person to be out there telling you how much money our community has saved, because we've got places in Moncton, Starksboro, Lincoln, Charlotte, Shelburne, Williston, everywhere, and everywhere where it's solved problems for quarter of the money that they're spending. So we really need community to get involved because we are getting a lot of pushback from the government because they really think that it's quicker and easier to trap. And I've done so much research that down south, I've checked out places. I am working with beach transit now to try to get them more involved. In one spot to kill 4 beavers and tear out 3 beaver dams is $8,000. And I have the bills that I put to prove it, so I'm not just running my mouth. It's like, and that was twice, we did it twice, so you spend $4,000 on a beaver flow device that lasts, 10 to 20, 30 years. Never gotta go back 50.
There you go.
You don't gotta go back. So it's when you, it's just a way of how we have to present it, and the environmental benefits are insane. I mean, Melissa's here, she's done a lot of work on Cedar Pond, we've got species there that are basically lost and now, because we're not actually beavers anymore. It's all of the benefits from financial to environmental, everything. It's can't beat it.
I'm thinking, this is a problem across North America. I get the tools. We have the ability as people to save hundreds of millions of dollars a year in North America, just do it. Anyway, this is what I love about Vermont. He's a political nobody. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. You didn't know anything about beavers, and God, this was just so passionate. We have so many people like that in this state, so we can make it happen. Oh, yeah, that's what something about it. It's a little Civil War history, but the first Vermont battalion, I think, has the highest casualty rate of any unit in U.S. Army history, because in the Civil War, they put the Vermonters out front, because they were good and tough, and if you grow up farming rock, mountainous terrain, you're going to be tough. You're gonna be tough, but it goes back to what I was saying, we should be the state that leads this, we are now, most people don't know it. But New England, northern New England leads the world in stuff. Starting with the Penobscot Nation in Maine. This first big flow device program was in 1950s, so it was amazing, they were building their own wooden pipes, because their plastic pipes hadn't been invented. And so we've led for a long time, and we got to keep moving. So you've been a wonderful audience. You've been really patient. Thank you. I'll answer as many questions as you want. And I just got here.
Yeah, can you
explain, the mechanics of the Beaver Deceivers.
Right, I'm very gonna ask that. Yeah.
Stop me.
Now you're here for a few more hours.
Well, I mean, I'm Sealer, I think
Yeah.
it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I can say this fact, but I don't always say this, because people always ask that question. And it's just so obvious to me after 30 years, and I forget to talk about it in detail. But I'm sorry to say this, but beavers aren't smart like we are. You know, their brains act, they work completely differently. They're not, we just deductive reasoning machines. You know, they're mostly instinctive animals. I mean, we just apparently flew a spaceship around the moon. Right? Beavers have barely gone off the ground yet. So, every now and then, if there's a tree at an angle, they'll climb up and away. That's it, that's as high as they got. I mean, that's what it boils down to. So, if you know that, you know, if you know what is the environmental stimuli that they're responding to. Like, I don't know how to picture a full of it. You know, if a human looked at that, they don't, you know, say, and a culvert with a pipe system, and that fence on the culvert, I call it a receiver fence, because it receives a pipe system. If the beavers, if they were humans, they'd step back and go, oh, obviously that's a pipe, and obviously it's hollow, and so we need to start at the upstream end of that and bury that. But the beavers will, you know, as long as I do a good job of eliminating the stimuli, they'll always just start in the corner by the culvert, on the receiver fence, and meanwhile, the waters, they can't bring the water in. It was being, I'm speaking of the pipe. And then, so there's basically two types of conflict going sites. So these narrow man-made outlets, mostly road culverts, with a lot of the outlets of man-made dams. And then what I call regular beaver dams. And then the regular beaver dam, you're just putting a permanent leak in it. You don't need the receiver patch, you just use the pipe system. You're just putting a permanent leak in the dam. And you're holding the water down below the top of the whole dam, basically. For most of the season, most of the damming season, right? That means there's no spillover stimulant. That means the beavers aren't adding stuff to the dam. And the dam's also in a constant state of decay. So you can arrest the vertical growth of the dam by sneaking that water away and protect your property. I hope that helps. I mean, there's a lot to it, and just a second, well, thank you. To complicate it, every site's different, every one I build is different, you know, you have to mold them. You're gonna be successful, but you really have to mold the devices to match the characteristics of the site. But it's, wait, it's enough to know that it can be done. We're humans, we're smart, you know, I put some time in this, developing some concepts. So it's there, it's ready to be exploited, we can do it, and we don't have to kill any beavers.
What's the beaver population doing? Going up, and the same time.
Yeah, no matter the, I say that, no, I'm serious, I say it that way because we tend to often obsess on that a bit more than we need to. I'm hoping it's going up, but it's really hard to know. Probably because it depends a lot on how many trappers are active because they take a lot. But us the predators do too. Predators take a lot. Patty's has a tail of sheep with it, I'll say this. Was that a coyote that grabbed it or a bear? So even though we don't have mountain lions and wolves, we have a lot of other predators. Beavers come in all sizes, so small predators can get small beavers, even eagles, you know, can yell at a young beaver. And so it's constantly changing, but I don't, with my Main Street studies,
Well, do we?
I don't- I'm not in my mind, but that's a relevant question. No, I mean, my goal is to fully exploit the beavers for their environmental values, and values to society. But we're not doing that. I mean, you remember the picture I showed you of all those floaters in the Green Mountain National Forest, down at Bennington? I mean, almost all of them are gone, you know, hundreds of them. There's no beavers in those, there's no hydrological values, you're not capturing any sediments, you're not using any wetland habitat. So it's definitely not enough there, and so, yeah.
Did you want to feel strength for the monthly?
Field trip, is that a field trip? Can I have a picnic?
There's no fear of beavers going extinct. But I don't think that's how we should look at their populations. You know, I think they're far too valuable. We need to try to exploit them more. Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's illegal. How wide is Vermont? I meant to Google this last night. I was thinking, how wide is Vermont, you know, say in Rockland? No, but a beaver might disperse on its own 40 miles. So I doubt the state's 80 miles wide, you know. Anyway, the point is, I think that's a law because of concerns about spreading disease around. The beavers are gonna, if they get disease, they're gonna spread it themselves, you know. So I wish we had that tool available. And it's also illegal in most of the surrounding states. They do it more out west. But we could really use it. However, in terms of solving a conflict, it does nothing, it's just the exact same as killing beavers in terms of eliminating a conflict point. Like the culvert, you know, you could wipe out the beavers and move them somewhere. Well, the next beaver comes on, it's going to find your culvert. And it's also very, very labor intensive and difficult to do well. And there's very, very few people who can do that. Hope that covers it. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for all the work that you've done
Thank
and explaining how this works and what we can do. And what I heard was probably one of the best things we can do is get a policy. Do you have a template or an example of what towns can
I'll write
use?
one for you. Yeah, but I've been promising people I'll write one. I haven't done it, but I could do that fairly quickly. Yeah,
That you're, have you seen?
haven't done it yet.
Have you seen the one on the website that somebody just mentioned?
Yeah, if you go to the Vermont Beaver Association website, there's one that was done by Williston and one done by Duxbury, and we have permission from Duxbury to have people replace their name with their name and music. And skip, that's gonna approved by you. That's the
I mean,
policy.
yeah, well, I mean, the information Patty and I have presented, you know, it's kind of the foundation of a policy is making the argument for environmental values and economic savings.
Thank you.
What are the primary arguments against your proposal?
I don't know. I can't imagine it being a good one. Well, I can give you one. I mean, people like me are rare, to say the least. You know, so it's difficult to do, and so we couldn't, I'm willing to train, I've always been willing to train people. It's all I've done for 30 years, and so I can do that, but it'll take other people, especially younger people, time to get good at it. It's so, but just quickly, let me just one thought. So I always speak in terms of a transition. You know, we have to transition. We need people killing beavers, unfortunately, you know, in a transition period, but we should have a policy that moves us away from that. And we should be building high quality flow devices, you know, as often as we can.
Arguments you will encounter when you present policies often come from, certain members of town, in particular, folks on road commissions or road crews don't have any affection at all for beavers. They've been at work for so long that they don't hear that there are solutions. Those guys in your slideshow, they kind of enjoy getting out there with their big equipment. So you will hear that beaver deceivers don't work or it's you can just kill them. So you're gonna hear that.
And it's a lot, I have to say this, because we have one in the audience, but there's a lot of other for them. They're just fantastic people.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Junior. I mean,
There are good reasons to be pretty annoying with beavers.
Just to put a cap on it,
it's,
it's run an excavation.
yeah.
Or one of them.
And so I think that possibly we can help be a part of the solution, which is why I'm here.
Well, it's to endless, Yeah, endlessly cleaning culvert, yeah, it's great to have that. Boy, I love it when I get a little help, because otherwise I'm doing it by hand. Yeah, but that has to be combined with ending the problem with a flow device.
And to your point.
Maybe you can learn how to build beaver deceivers.
Well, to your point with supply,
Yeah,
so if one of the counter arguments is, well, it's a good idea, but we couldn't do it in as many places as we need to, then possibly learning to incorporate machinery to
yeah,
help implement the system, so.
yeah.
Okay.
No, this is the thing, it's only, I don't know what the average is, maybe it's four chronic conflict points in every town. It's not so. So there's this, again, it goes back to what I said, there's this image that, oh, well, it could be problems everywhere. No, it never will be. It's very limited. This is a line I like for years. You can eliminate those. You can eliminate those points. You know, I could very quickly for decades. Or if you don't do that and you rely on a kill-based defense, then 4 conflict points are going to translate into scores of conflict events over the years. So you might as well have 100 conflict points if you don't eliminate them, because they're going to keep returning. Thank you for your question. That's great. Oh, you okay?
I was just wondering what's happening to Bryant's Park.
What is happening with the Crabs Park? There is a 2018 Beavers moved in and they took, well, I had a whole presentation. I'm not gonna run you guys through another power.
Okay.
But suffice to say that they are doing well. They've reconnected floodplains. They are expanding their beaver complex, giving us all these wonderful ecosystem services because they picked a good place. They picked the park. There's a watershed adjacent to it where beavers moved in. And in both these instances, there is a culvert going under Sheldon Falls Road. And in that instance, a landowner decided, we don't have a solution for this. They're going to block the culvert. So they took out the beaver. So that's the thing. So here we have the park where we're retaining, so people have those great beavers do the work. But if people don't understand the value that the beavers are presenting and they don't understand the options for keeping them on the landscape, then they're going to be trapped out and they're going to be, and the beaver dams will be excavated. And you could just Google beaver and excavator and you will be amazed at the number of videos because people are proud of this work because they're full moral clarity. They think they're doing society a favor and people just don't understand it. So that, I'll go on and on. So I'll just end it there.
And to that,
And yes.
we received some funding to build a new bridge, over the new beaver activity.
Yeah. So maybe on that note, we'll wrap up and if anybody.
I saw more
Thank you all for coming. If anybody wants to stick around and ask some more questions of Skip, he will take any and all.